Hello everyone, I am Alisha and I'm here to present my paper, Being Branding Feminism, is Female Empowerment a Marketable Concept for the Luxury Fashion Industry in the United Kingdom, a case study of Burberry. Followed by the different feminist movements and the evolution of women's role in society, different researchers such as Jill, McRobbie and Shepard have looked into the representation of women in advertising. While some researchers indicate that women are still portrayed as passive objects of the male gaze in advertising and that women are still associated with a gender roles, other researchers prove that past movements have encouraged the change in the portrayal of women in advertising, whereby they are now also being empowered and portrayed as leaders through femvertising. Nevertheless, the use of these feminist ideas in advertising is questionable by different researchers. Some of them believe that the advertising industry is not genuinely supporting feminist movements, but is only commodifying feminist ideas and icons in order to make profits. By elaborating on both sides of this debate, the aims of this research are to find out about the progress in the representation of women in advertising, to investigate where women appeared as empowered in terms of representation, production and consumption in the luxury fashion industry, and to assess the use of female empowerment as a new means of promotion within the luxury fashion industry. Based on these research aims, two research methods have strategically been chosen, namely the case study and the textual analysis. The first mentioned research method was used to investigate the process and dynamics of change in the representation of women in luxury fashion industry and has allowed for the exploration of advertising. The luxury fashion brand company named Burberry was chosen as the case since it is among the brands with the most revenue in the United Kingdom and has a group of women leadership in the communication department, which make it important to understand the position of women in management of luxury fashion brands and of its advertising. This also brings out the originality of this research, since female empowerment in terms of representation, production and consumption within the luxury fashion advertising, we focus on Burberry as a London brand has not yet been explored in literature on gender and advertising. To better understand the representation of women in fashion advertising, more precisely to find out whether Burberry is oppressing women, empowering women through representation, or commodifying feminism in the advertising campaigns, the case study was combined with a textual analysis of 3 adverts from Burberry. One advert from 2015, one from 2016, and another one from 2017 was studied in this regard. However, it is important to note that this method can be problematic in the sense that there is no single interpretation of a text. Different members of different cultures will understand and interpret the text differently. Similarly, people around the world will have different interpretation of the same text and as they have different background. The research will now be broken into 3 parts in relation to the respective aims. Focusing on the first part, the progress and empowerment of women through representation in luxury fashion advertising was researched. When exploring literature on the female body in fashion advertising, thinness in fashion advertising, and the female body as sex symbols are 3 areas that can be highlighted. The formal literature indicates that over the past century, thinness was gradually becoming the representation for feminine beauty in advertising, and this is still the case in present advertising. The second area is the female body as sex symbols in fashion advertising. As noted by Janice Winship, the feminine image is represented based on a male warrior perspective and defined by the masculine culture. Such portrayals can be noticed for some instances when the female model is in a recumbent position, which renders her very dependent and vulnerable, and conventionalizing expression of sexual availability. And these representations do not reflect the real woman, but are only images of a woman based on male libido expectation. As a consequence, this is constantly widening the gender gap through use of sexualized images by reinforcing the existing imbalance in terms of social power between men and women and by associating women with lower degrees of social power and control. Nevertheless, following past movements, advertisers have identified the anger of women for being objectified and bombarded with unattainable idealized images of femininity. Thus, in an attempt to engage with female consumers, they have reviewed ethical consideration and concern in the portrayal of women in cultural vehicles, such as advertising, and devised new strategies to represent women. One of the strategies is to produce advertisements which value women and girls rather than objectifying them. And these are becoming more popular. These kind of adverts are defined by different authors as femvertising. Femvertising is no longer a niche internet neologism, but a genuinely precis chapter in feminism fourth wave, and is described by Rosanne Haley as being the female empowerment advertising. Recent examples of such types of advertising are the Real Beauty campaign and Like a Girl campaign from Always. In order to sell their products through femvertising, advertisers highlight the concept of empowerment, which is about being congruent and empowered by the femininity, to portray women as independent, assertive, enjoying life, and career women. This change in the portrayal of women was also observed in the textual analysis of this research. The first advert is dated from the Spring Collection 2016 of Burberry in 2015 and portrays themes such as nudity, fitness, and whiteness, which have dominated the mass media coverage on beauty advertisement and have gradually become the representation for feminine beauty in advertising. Some positive changes can be observed in the following year, during which Burberry put more emphasis on the gender-neutral concept by reimagining masculinity and femininity as fluid concept. Here this concept is represented through the clothing and physical appearance of the models. The hair length of both models is the same and they both have a nude makeup. In addition, the outerwear being advertised gives no indication about the gender to the audience. This rather gives an impression that it is a unisex collection. This assumption is further supported while observing the other adverts from that same collection. Almost all of them portray gender-neutral concept for models and clothing. The next analyzed advert is dated from last year. During this campaign, the model Adwa Boa has empowered women by going against the different norms of the ideal feminine beauty and make readers understand that female models don't necessarily need to have a long shining hair, be white and sexy to be characterized as being the ideal woman. As noted by different reporters, this model is currently changing the fashion industry with her shaved head, unusual looks and outspokenness. It is also important to note that Adwa Boa is an activist for female empowerment. This can be reflected in the different advertising campaigns that she is posing for. In the area of advertising, Burberry has made a wise choice by hiring an activist for female empowerment as the face of Burberry for the Spring Collection 2018. Following these different findings from the textual analysis supported by secondary research on the representation of women in luxury fashion advertisement, it can be noted that the latter is positively changing from using nudity, fitness, and whiteness to genderless approach and then to femvertising as a contemporary phenomenon. Let us now focus mainly on the second aim of this research by elaborating on where women appear as empowered, first in terms of consumption and then production, in the luxury fashion industry. With the increase in purchasing power of women in society, luxury has shifted from being male trophies and status symbols to being accessible to the female gender. This phenomenon is termed by different researchers as the feminization of luxury. This increase in purchasing power can be accounted for the fact that more women are working, earning higher salaries, more educated, getting married at a later age, more liberal in attitudes to sex, and are dating more. Moreover, women are also the ones who usually take purchasing decisions when it comes to clothing for the family. The main reason for buying luxury fashion, as proven by different researchers, or to reflect their status enhancement and financial value in society, to show their achievement vanity, and to be part of the current fashion within the cultural environment. When it comes to the empowerment of women through production, it can be noted that women in the advertising industry have historically held the post dealing with client account, rather than being directly involved in creative side of projects. Even though creative development normally starts on the same level for human beings, irrespective of the gender, the concept of creativity itself is strongly linked to historically masculine agentic qualities, and men are judged as more creative than women in general. Thus, when it comes to recognizing creativity, men are more likely to attain eminence as compared to women in domains such as art and science. This might account for the fact that higher rank creative roles have remained mostly for the male employees. As a result, there are less opportunities for women to progress in media and advertisement agencies up to positions of power and authority. With focus on the United Kingdom, it can be noticed that by the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising in 2013 that in the advertising workforce there are almost 50% female employees. However, only 22% have management positions. Nevertheless, focusing on Burberry only, the contrary can be pointed out. Mentioned by the CEO, the company is committing itself in reducing the gender pay gap and intends to work on issues of diversity, gender, and ethnic representation. When it comes to the communication department of Burberry, the latter has given the lead to the communication to women, namely Marta Brincevic, Sarah Monday, and Isabel May. Nevertheless, it is worth pointing out that even though there are women at the leadership roles in the communication department of Burberry, the majority of men are still at the board of directors. More precisely, there are 7 men versus 5 women at the head of this luxury fashion brand. However, as compared to the luxury fashion brand Louis Vuitton, which has 16 men versus 7 women in its board of directors, Burberry is quite gender balanced, but is still not pushing female empowerment even further. The next part will now assess the use of female empowerment as a new means of promotion within the luxury fashion industry. It was previously explained how women has evolved in society and how advertising has been formed. As observed in the textual analysis, Burberry has made positive progress in its representation of women in adverts. Last year, the brand has adopted a femvertising approach. Nevertheless, this is yet to be proven whether Burberry, as an advertiser, is genuinely supporting women's movement or is only using this marketing pathway to make profit. According to Fudge, with the rise of a postmodernist society, there is an increase in interest related to capitalism and the logic of commodification of everything. This interest can also be experienced in the advertising industry, whereby advertisers are involved in the communication of objects, culture, and humans for economic profit accumulation. As D'Amato claimed, most of the time women act as commodities. This was also the case in the past and is still the case today. The only difference is that women oppression was the main profitable pathway then, and in today's context, female empowerment in advertising is replacing that pathway. And in the end, advertisers are only cheapening the concept of feminism and fempowerment by making it a mere commodity. This has been elaborated by authors like Feynman, who claim that too many attempts to market women can turn female power into a commodity or reduce female power into something mostly good for buying more commodities. By having this inauthentic support, the fight for women equality is devalued and promoted as a mere object or symbol. Consequently, instead of producing advertising to empower women, advertisers are engaged in commodifying feminism in order to serve the commodity consumption. In summary, this research has reviewed women oppression in media and has reflected on how women are empowered in the luxury fashion advertising. taking into consideration the feminization of luxury, the link between creativity, recognition, and gender, and also exploring femvertising as both female empowerment and its link with capitalism. However, there are also still some areas for further researches and improvement in the field. For instance, while doing research, it was noticed that most of the studies analyze gender representation in regards to television and print. However, since we are moving into a postmodern and digital world, more researches should be carried out by analyzing how women are represented in digital media, including social media and applications. In addition, the paper has discussed that creativity is normally considered to be higher in men, while also mentioning that during the early development of human beings, almost everyone has the same level of creativity. Thus, it is worth to question why and how do men achieve higher levels of creativity and get higher position in the creative industries as compared to women, even though we are mostly born with equal level of creativity. Another area that can be researched on is related to the fact that there are no universally acceptable criteria to judge the communication of women and the communication of feminism. It was thus difficult to judge the advertising activities of Burberry. In this light, a large group of researchers in the field should come up with a coding scheme which will specify criteria in determining whether an advert is objectifying women, empowering women through advertising, or commodifying the idea of feminism. All these leave pathway for further studies in the field of gender in advertising. Thank you for watching the video. If you have any question or want to discuss on certain points, please do not hesitate to email me.